Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Naomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. So, welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today, we're going to be speaking with Dale Meyer. Now, in the last 5 years, Dale's gone from overworked, underpaid, and miserable to now owning and operating 5 of his own businesses and achieving complete freedom in his life. Through the Sequoia Project, he now wants to spend his time showing others how they can do the same for themselves. And one life at a time, they will attempt to change the world. So welcome, Dale. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you, Naomi. That sounds pretty cool when you say it back to me like that.
Yeah, I have that with most of my guests. They're like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit special right now. And feel like I've got some significance. So tell me a little bit more about the project. So for the listeners, open transparency here. It took me 3 times to say that just because of the pronouncing Sequoia, right? To get that introduction right. So tell us about that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, cool. So the project itself is just something that I kind of started as a passion project, and it's still super young. Like we don't, we're kind of learning and growing as it grows. But it'd probably only be about a month old, maybe just over about a month old since the idea actually, we put it on paper and started working with it. And we just kind of put the question out there for people, and like obviously we'll dive into this as we go through, but people starting businesses and all that kind of stuff, like before they start, the statistics are already shifted way towards the negative. Like people say, 70 to 80% of small businesses fail in the first couple of years. With the experience that I've had in starting my own businesses and then starting multiple in different industries as well, I feel like those statistics, it's time for those statistics to change. And I think that as we bring those numbers back and back and back, and more people see success in their small businesses, it can really change lives. I know it changed mine. Like you said in the intro, I was unhappy. I was working a job where I wasn't treated right, and I wasn't compensated fairly, and I was doing too many hours, couldn't spend time with my family and friends and all that kind of stuff, let alone achieve my dreams outside of my career. And going through this process and through the journey that we've been on, in the last 5 years, it's really it's not only changed my life, it's changed everyone that works with me, it's changed my family, it's changed my partner's relationship, like all those kind of things, and all in a positive way. I believe that I've come out a better person for that journey. So I think now that I've got a bit of free time and I've kind of built what I've built, it's time to give back, because who knows where I would be now if I had help where I was 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. I kind of have a little bit of a similar journey in that I was in that corporate space for most of my career. I was treated quite well and I was paid quite well, but I still wasn't finding that it was meeting me. I was serving at such a high level. I was putting so much energy into it, but and I spoke about this in another podcast with someone, but I was in a zone of excellence and I wasn't in my zone of genius, right? And so when you're in your zone of genius, that's when stuff flows. That's when it becomes easy. And so I'm assuming you've moved into that space now with what you're doing.
Yeah, it's almost like, and it's hard. Like I think doing anything that you've never done before, it's hard. Like it's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable. So you're going to have to, deal with those, cross those bridges as you come to them. But I think for me now, the cool thing is it's almost like the rock is starting to come down the hill a little bit. I've done the years, I've done the thousands of days of pushing it up the hill, and now the rock is kind of starting to come down. And for me, like my experience in general was probably harder than most people had it. Like I injured myself working, trying to build my businesses and stuff like that. So I just don't believe it should take that like physical toll on people to kind of get out of the class area or change their situation. So definitely now, like having the time, like I said, to do something purely out of passion. Like the numbers don't have to make all that much sense. It's kind of just like, I'm just doing this just because it makes me feel good. It helps people. The feedback we're getting already is overwhelming. So hey, if I can go to sleep at night and feel like I helped the world a little bit, then cool. Let's do that.
Yeah, yeah. And part of these journeys that we're on and doing all these sorts of things, there's inevitably going to be failure along the way, right? And I
Yeah.
don't know, for myself, I'm a bit of a achiever or a perfectionist. So that was one of my biggest hurdles, was actually being open to failing, right? When I first started my business. Can you give us a little bit more, information, or what your thoughts are and feelings are on how important failure is? What is the importance of failure?
Yeah, I think it's probably in terms of a personal journey and in terms of building something out in the world that others can experience and feel and touch. I think that it's inevitable. Like
Mm,
it's going to happen, because before you start, you don't have any information, because you've never been the CEO of a company and you've never had employees and you've never owned a fleet of vehicles or anything like this. So
mm,
how can you honestly expect yourself to have it all figured out before you start?
mm,
So I think that people that go into any kind of get out of their comfort zone and want to do anything different to change their lives or change their perception on how things work, I think you have to embrace failure in such a way that the only failure that's actually worth discussing is the one where you go, I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm not going to
mm.
try anymore.
Yeah.
Because as long as you keep trying, you keep learning, you keep improving, and a huge thing that we're getting on in the Sequoia project, like with all the information that's available to everyone at any time, is teaching people to individualize that information. So even when you do fail, you fail differently to everyone
Mm,
else. You fail
mm,
it in your own way, so that the results you get will be different.
mm. Yeah, and that way you spoke, I really love that, is that it's inevitable in everything that we
Mm.
do. And I think we miss that. And the common example that's often used is, as toddlers, if we just gave up on trying to walk, we would never be walking. So,
Yeah.
when we're younger, we're wired for failure because it's all the passion of
Well,
learning.
yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to this point where we've got the origin stories or the conditioning of what the society and our peer groups. And then it becomes embarrassing to fail, and then
Yeah.
that society puts that pressure on us. But I think that was one of the biggest obstacles I had to get over, was looking at it and going, failing forward is better than not falling at all.
100%, 100%. I say to guys that work with us, I'm like, what we do in the Sequoia project now has been tried and tested, because like the guys that work with me, they were like, hey, I'm trying to grow my business like alongside your business kind of thing. Like, and they were asking me questions and stuff. And this was like, 3 years ago. And we've kind of honed and optimized that process of helping people as quickly as we can and giving them the right foundations. So, we've done this with, maybe 80 people before the project existed, but it wasn't called anything. It was just something we were doing to help people out.
Yeah.
But I think that's a massive thing that you just touched on there. Like, we were at one point in our lives, we were hardwired for failure, and that's literally all that could happen. We knew
Yeah.
no better. But
Yeah.
back then, failure was celebrated. Like,
Yes.
if you take 2 steps, your parents go nuts, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Dude, like you're taking steps. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
But now, if you took 2 steps out of a thing that had 100 steps, people would be like, "Oh man, like what are you doing?" It's
Yeah.
it's that negative
Yeah. Yeah.
connotation. But I think that's huge. I think that's massive. Is like just seeing the failure in a different perspective. Like if you're kind of wherever you are in life, if everything around you is stationary, is stagnant, and people are in their comfort zones, who are you actually trying to impress by taking these steps?
Mm,
By doing this new thing. Because
mm.
if the people that are in the same situation as you think that's the wrong thing to do, well, hey, have a look around. Is this the situation you want to be in? And who are we actually trying, to impress with these steps forward?
Yeah, and most of the people around us, this is another good analogy I was told once that I just love, is, we've got glasses. We go to the doctor, we need prescription glasses. They give us the prescription glasses. That's how we see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, if someone next to us puts our glasses on, they're like, oh, this is blurry. This doesn't work, because they don't have that same vision. And I think we tend to look to our friends. We have a great idea and we go to our peer group, our friends, our family, we go, hey, I've got this great idea. And instantly their fear comes through. And they're like,
Mm.
oh, you sure you want to do that? And if you
Yeah,
try it and you fail, they're like, see, told you shouldn't have done that. And you're
a
right.
hundred
It's
percent.
reaffirmed, right?
Yeah, no, that's no, you're 100% right. Like it's funny how like you said, society and everything, and I guess like no one's at fault really. Like you can't really blame anyone. for the situation that they're in or anything like that, because everyone's limited to, you know, the fact is that they were either born into, or the school they went to, or the parents they have, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's all, we're an accumulation of everything that's ever been or happened to us. So yeah, I think it's huge to kind of not only embrace that failure is going to happen, but also know that you can't kind of blame yourself for where you're at right now. Like where you're starting, the starting point is the starting point, and you know it hasn't been maybe everything to get you there hasn't been your choice. So let's just start.
Yeah, we want to say we want to celebrate awesomeness and create and push people, you know, in our family and our friend groups. But I think we tend to sit in a space of just being an average person, just to please the group. And so what do you think is dangerous? You know, how dangerous is the average person?
Yeah, so like I talk about this subject a lot, like how dangerous actually is the average person, because a lot of us see you know, the skill set we have, we see the job that we have, we see all these things as like and if you're not happy with your situation, we see them as kind of a negative or a holdback, maybe like a bit of an anchor that keeps us where we are, you know. But the fact of the matter is, if you've gone through your whole life, you've made a lifetime worth of decisions, everything that you've done, all the actions you take led you to where you are now, then if we keep doing the same actions, the obvious result is going to be we're going to get the same result. It can't be any different. If we know where we are now, we're comfortable here. So if we keep doing the same thing, we'll get what we get now. So if we're in that situation, what makes us dangerous, or what makes any person who considers themselves average dangerous, is you have absolutely nothing to lose, because your entire life has been conditioned to get you where you are right now. And if you've got a job, you know, that pays quite well, but it's just not the thing that you're passionate about, or if you're not living in the right area, or you don't have the right relationship, or whatever it is, you know exactly how to get all of that back because you've done it before.
Yeah.
So what is actually the worst case scenario for quote unquote the average person? The worst case scenario is you end up exactly where you're at now, where you're surviving. You've got people around you, you've got a house over your head, like all that kind of stuff. You're not going to die.
Yeah.
Like, so I believe that this makes people very, very dangerous, because when you know how to secure the worst case scenario, it means that you have nothing to lose. You have absolutely nothing to lose, which means you have everything to gain. So if you're the kind of person that goes, hey, I want change and I want something different, and I can see a different life for me and my family, and you can realize that you've got nothing to lose, then the risk is zero. But when we talk about business and we talk about, you know, putting you know, money down for, you know, buying a business or getting a loan, or like whatever it is, all these kind of things, we think about the stress and we think about the risk and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, the base point, if you simplify everything, the base point is you have nothing to lose. You are dangerous. You can do anything. And the worst case scenario is you'll be where you are right now. And over, you know, it might be 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years of decisions and everything like that, you're going to be pretty good at identifying the choices you're making to get you to where you're at. You've got the experience. So I think the average person is so dangerous. It's just maybe the perception of being like, and I don't even like the word, but, you know, quote unquote average. The perception of being that means that you have nothing to gain. You're in a position of loss, but I don't believe that's the case.
And you could even reframe that average into safe, right? So the safe
100%.
person, you know, the safe person is dangerous because the safe person, like you said, has nothing to lose. And, you know, the safe person as well is usually the person on the outside smiling and on the inside is just going, what am I doing? Like, why aren't I happy? You know, I've got the home, I've got the family, you know, the great partner, the kids, the job, the income. Like, why aren't I happy? Purely because they're just being too safe a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I think like in terms of like, you know, looking internally and asking internal questions, I think asking a lot of the time, like everyone's real busy. Like everyone's got a lot of stuff going on, you know, they've got family commitments and, you know, house commitments and job commitments and sport or hobbies or whatever it is. Even just asking those kind of questions is super important, you know, to the safe person, because once you ask that and you get the answer to it, like in your brain, you can never unanswer that question. Like if you know, oh, hey, look, everyone looking in says I got this dream life, but I don't feel like I'm living my dream.
Yeah.
You can't unthink that. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think I learned about something a couple of years back. It's called a basilisk thought. And it's like, once you think it, you can't unthink it. So you kind of are programmed to have to do something about it. Because otherwise you wake up every day and you go, oh, well, I'm still not doing that thing, but I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really cool just to ask those questions, because the simplest questions give you, you ask simple questions, get simple answers. And when the answer is simple, it's something that you can do something about it.
Yeah, and look, I love, and I'm sure you get the same buzz as well. I love working with people that are sitting in that programming of what they are and aren't capable of, or
Mm.
what is and isn't available to them, and just asking that one question that usually makes them just sit up. I was speaking with someone the other day, and they were talking about, a risk on taking on doing a hobby, actually a new hobby, which was bringing them heaps of joy, but they injured themselves. And so they were kind of like, oh, I need to sit down and really think about if I want to do this. So my thing was, so instead of thinking about whether you want to do it and being injured again, what if you think about how likely is it that anyone that's been doing that activity before has been injured in the way you were?
Mm.
And they kind of just looked at me. I said, because
Good.
if the likelihood of that was next to nothing, then that was a freak thing, right? It can't, but that's what we do in life. We have one little trip up, and that becomes our focal point, rather than flipping that and going, wow, that was really out there. Like, that was really unexpected. It's happened once. It can't happen again, right? Like getting hit by lightning.
Dude, that's so cool, man. You're a really cool person. The way, like the questions you ask, I think that's so powerful, because I have such a huge thing on like, what question are we actually trying to get the answer to? Because a lot of the times we ask like surface questions, and a lot of the times we ask questions, but we don't even know what kind of answer we want. So like for example, that example you just gave then, like this person, is the question in their head is like, oh, will I be able to sustain my my lifestyle and my income and, like, my whatever, my happiness with this hobby if I get injured again? But what kind of answer are you going to get from that question? Whereas the question you asked, it's like, hey, how, like, statistically, how likely is this to happen again? Well, if it's 0.3, then why are we even talking about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. Questions and curiosity, I would say, like, the number one ingredient into, like, getting into a different mindset, or changing your perspective on how things work in your own life, is asking those questions, but then also learning the skill of asking questions, and realizing that, hey, I want a certain kind of answer, so I have to ask a certain kind of question.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
I think
think
that's good.
there's so many people though, and I know I've been there too as well, probably coming from that place when I was sitting more as a people pleaser, right? An achiever, perfectionist, you don't want to upset people, you're there to serve. And so sometimes the questions come through our head. We just don't ask them because we don't want to upset the other person. But sometimes that's exactly the question that they need to hear. And this is like a book that I read, which I recommend to everyone, is oh, now it's just gone from my brain. Was it the being comfortable with being disliked? Was it the, anyway, I'll think of it in a second. But when the courage to be disliked, I knew it would come in.
Yes.
And that's what it talks about. A lot of our stuff we don't do, or the conversations we don't have, or the questions we don't ask, for fear of upsetting someone else, rather than looking and flipping and reframing and going, but this is how I serve them best. Actually not asking them isn't serving them. That's just preserving my own little peace of mind.
Your feelings. Yeah.
But if I want to serve them, then I have to go and ask those questions.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like on the topic of questions and stuff like that, I've found, like, I'm a pretty introverted kind of person. I don't get out and kind of do podcasts or anything like that. I do my business, and I just do my business. Like, that's it. And I just do like everything that I know I have to do to be the best version of me. And then I don't talk about it. I don't do anything like that. Obviously, trying to help more people. Now it's time to come out of my shell and kind of do this stuff. But for me, I found, like, with helping people, because I'd asked myself so many of these questions, and I'd asked myself the hard questions that no one really wants to know the answer to, and I'd done it for such a period of time, that where I was coming from was pure, like, childlike wonder and curiosity. So when a kid asks you 1,000 times, why is the sky blue? You don't turn around and yell at the kid. You just do your best to answer the question. So for me, it comes from such a point of, like, hey man, like, I'm so interested in helping you, and I'm so interested in learning about why you think the way you think. I'm going to ask these questions. And in a normal conversation, they might seem abrupt, or they might seem personal, or something like that. But I'm coming from just a pure place of, like, hey, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I haven't done. And I'm also, the reason I'm asking is because I'm so curious about how we can get the best result for you, that I don't feel like, hey, like you're probably not going to like me. I actually have a dude that I work with who makes millions of dollars a year, and he just keeps me around for the mindset.
Yeah.
He just wants to stay on top of his mindset and kind of do that that personal growth kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because he gets lost in the fray a little bit.
Yeah.
And he said to me, hey dude, I'll be honest with you, I hate talking to you. I hope I get to a point where I never talk to you again.
Yeah.
And I said, like, awesome, dude. Like, it's not my job to be your best mate. It's my job. You didn't call me because you wanted a friend. I didn't put an ad in the paper and said, hey, I'm looking for friendly people to talk to. You heard my name, you heard about what I do and what we do as the Sequoia Project, and you wanted results. And I can help you get them. But the caveat of that is we're going to have to ask some hard questions. Now, I don't really, it's not my problem whether you like me or you don't. It's my problem whether you get results, because that's what you asked for.
Yeah. So let's go a bit deeper then into what is the Sequoia Project. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So at the moment, and I say at the moment because this is, we're dealing with people. People are evolutionary. We change, we grow, and we do all this kind of stuff. So like all my other businesses, like we have a service, or we have a product, or we have something that, is, it's binary. It's like, hey, if you want X, we give, we supply that. Whereas this is, people grow and people change. So, what we teach in week 1, we cannot teach again in week 7, like it has to always evolve. So at the moment, what the Sequoia Project is, it's just like a little hub, just a little group, where we are bringing people in. We're kind of setting a foundation of knowledge about business, about who we have to be in business, before we can actually, achieve the things we want to achieve. Now, the example I give is so many people, when I've helped them with their business, they say to me, I say, like, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to make more money. All I want to do is make more money. And I go, cool. How much did you make last year? They say, I made $55,000. I say, all right, this year we'll make $55,001.
Yeah.
And they go, well, that's not what I want. And I said, well, how are you going to get what you want if you don't know what you want?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, in most circumstances, 80% of the time, people will be like, all right, well, what if I wanted to make $1 million? But all right, cool. If you had a business and you needed $5,000 to make $1 million, you need 5,000 customers to make $1 million profit this year. Yeah. If I gave you all 5,000 of those customers today, could you handle them? Could you manage could you manage the accounts? Could you do the bookkeeping? Could you manage the quotes and the invoices? Could you do the tax, everything you need to do for the tax, everything like that? And the answer is 100% no. Yeah. So how do we become that person that has 5,000 customers or 50 employees or whatever it is? We have to actually be that person before the opportunity presents itself. So people talk all the time. They say about opportunity, there's no opportunity and everything's, everything I won't say the word I was going to say, but like nothing is coming, rolling my way and all this kind of stuff, and there's no opportunity out there. The fact of the matter is, opportunity is everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Absolutely everywhere. Yeah. But you need to be the kind of person that can act on opportunity. Well, identify it, act on it, and then be able to come up with the solution for whatever the problem is. Now, if you're the kind of person that can't solve problems in your own life, or like, you get held up on obstacles, then it's very unlikely when you've got 5,000 people counting on you to solve those problems that you're going to be able to solve them. So that's where we're starting with the Sequoia Project. At the moment, like, we've only really opened doors, maybe a month ago, might be 3 weeks. But we've got 14 people in there already, and we go through these things twice a week. I jump on there personally live, and I do all this kind of stuff that we're talking about now. But we have a topic a week that we focus on. Then we have a weekly challenge, and then on the second session, it's all Q&A. So you can jump on there, you can ask me questions, or you can try the stuff we talk about on the first session, get the results you get, ask me more questions, and I answer them in real time. The people that sign up as well, they also get access to me by email and with like Messenger and stuff like that. So if at 8 o'clock at night, you're sitting there going, oh man, I've got this idea for a business, I don't know how to start it, you can send me a message, and as soon as I see it, I'll get back to you.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And the thing I actually love the most about what you're speaking there is, you can give people tools and techniques, but it's who they need to become is the key element. And even in the leadership program that I put together, the ripple effect, that's the key element, right? Like, you can sit down and brainstorm with a fellow leader and find out what tools to use, but it's who you need to become to level up to that space if you want to keep continuing that evolutionary process in leadership. So I love that you're focusing on that in the project, because that's something we tend to miss off. We tend to do a course on how to do this, how to do that, how to convert sales, how to, all of those sort of things that we need in our business, rather than sitting there and going, well, hang on a minute, who do I need to be? How do I need to think? How do I need to approach problems? What questions do I need to be asking myself? How do I reframe? All of those sorts of things that actually is a strength in character is really what gets us to the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is like if you can't do that work, the groundwork, like that foundation. I know people who have come to me and they've wanted to start a business. I've helped them start a business, and the first month they've got 200 customers, but by month 2, they can't service it. They're so flustered they can't get out of bed. They've got decompression blankets and stuff on them. They're stressed and they've got anxiety. Now it's like that's a unicorn. If you're going to start a business from scratch and in 30 days get 200 customers, that's a unicorn in business.
Yeah.
But they couldn't handle the social responsibility. They couldn't handle the amount of emails or product inquiries or whatever it was. They couldn't handle it. So everything went perfectly. And I think we need to prepare ourselves for both sides of the coin. Think like everyone focuses on things going wrong, but what happens if things go perfectly? Are you still the kind of person that can handle perfect? So yeah, that's where we're playing around at the moment. And as we go in and the base knowledge and we grow and we get more people into this group, as the base knowledge grows, we're going to start looking, into the things that, like the tangible things, like how to register a business, how to register for tax, what kind of bookkeeping to do, how to, do accountants, if you want a LLC, if you want to trust, all that kind of stuff. And then, customer acquisition, productivity, efficiency, systems, all that. We talk about all of that stuff, but there's no point I can give you the best systems in the world. Just like you said, I can give you everything I do on a daily basis, but it's not going to matter if you don't know how to implement it yourself.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Naomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Naomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgrowconsulting.com.au.
So there's a couple of questions that I normally ask all of my guests. So the first one is, what's the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome and how did that strengthen your connection in Wood? Because sometimes we look at, and this is again, becoming that person, right? We look at those obstacles and we think, oh, this is going to be overwhelming. Or we look at them and we go, there's a gold nugget in there.
Mm-hmm. Easy done. Yeah, for me, the biggest obstacle I had to overcome was, funnily enough, it was something that I didn't even know I was battling with. It was like a complete unknown. And it's, when I say battle, it wasn't like that. But mentally, the thing for me was when I started out doing stuff for myself, I didn't know any better. So it was like, hey, can I sustain the lifestyle that we have without the security of the employment that I've been having?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. Like that was where my mind solely was like, hey, can I make my income from last year by myself without anyone saying, hey, rock up at this time and do this thing and you'll get paid this much. Yeah. So that's where it started. But over time, it actually kind of mutated into this thing of like, we started to get employees, we started to get people that were relying on us for their income and stuff like that. And the real obstacle to overcome was, is the goal bigger than just me and my needs and what I want? Because in the days where, you might be feeling sick like you today, Naomi, like, or you're tired or you've run down or you've just worked 120 hours this week or like, all those kind of things. Yeah. For me, the biggest obstacle was identifying a goal and getting to the point where the things I wanted to achieve was so much bigger than just me. Because then I could, through all the failures and the mistakes that I made and all that kind of stuff. And I look back now at mistakes that I made 4 years ago and I'm like, what are you thinking? But yeah, for me, the biggest thing was being able to go, not take it so personally. Okay. Like it's not about me. Like I'm not that special, like quote unquote, like it's not, the goal is bigger than me. So doing the things that are hard or doing the things that take a little longer or, whatever it is, making the mistakes, just not getting on my own case about them and realizing that it's all part of a bigger vision. Like if I keep doing what I'm doing, more people get jobs that they love. You know, like more people get well paid for their time. The businesses are set up in such a way that, you know, everyone wins. You know, it was kind of like I could take these blinkers of like employment off my, you know, off my eyes and go, well, in what situation can I pay someone fairly and I still make enough money, but I'm organizing the appointments, so I don't have to make, you know, X amount of dollars an hour, because the job isn't as hard. So the person that's doing the really hard labor, yeah, they should get paid.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing that hard labor anymore, shouldn't I be happy, you know, not ripping this person off to get more money for myself? And that was so important, because the goal, the things I want to achieve are so much bigger than myself. I don't mind the 3 a.m. starts. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind working so hard that my fingernails bleed. I don't mind. It's not personal. It's not personal. I'm just a dude trying to build something bigger than myself. So whatever it takes is what it takes.
Yeah.
And for me, that was huge. That was the biggest obstacle I had to overcome. Obviously, the way that it impacted me inwardly is that I could let a lot of stuff go. A lot of the things that I made mistakes on, a lot of things I couldn't control as well. You know, like when COVID happened, there was so many, like in our construction business alone, there was so many people taking on everyone. Like they were just like, we need more work, we need more houses, everyone's moving to the Gold Coast and all that kind of stuff. And like I was fairly fresh in the construction industry at the time, and I was like, this cannot be sustainable. So we actually brought our team back, and I had to let good people go, you know, and all that kind of stuff in a really hard time. And that really sucked. And I didn't want to go to those people's front doors and be like, guys, like we like, for the sake of the business, we have to do this.
Yeah.
But if I didn't, then everyone loses their income. Everyone, you know, and it's hard, man. Like it really, really hurt. Like it really hurt. But the upshot of that is when things rolled forward, you know, after COVID and everything like that, and things started to slow down, people were letting their people go, and they had nowhere to go. So where did they come? They came to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the long run, like, yeah, I could have taken that really personally, and I could have got depressed about having to tell these people, sorry guys, but we can't keep doing this. And when I say this, like they were the newest people into our business.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, like all that kind of stuff. But you know, it was still hard. It didn't make it any difference whatsoever. But in the long run, if they wanted to, they could all come back. We were in a position where the business had grown in that time and grown sustainably. Yeah. So now we could welcome them all back with open arms. We could bring on more people, and we could do all these things. But I didn't have to take it personally, because the goal is, if everyone loses their job, then I personally will feel like I failed.
Yeah.
So how can I take it, you know, in such a way that it's what's good for everyone? It's for the greater good. And that was the biggest obstacle for me.
Yeah. And that way you went inward as well kind of fits into a theory, I suppose, or a concept that I talk about, which is me, we, and community level thinking. So, you know, me level thinking is just what about me, which would have meant that you probably wouldn't have had those conversations, right? Yeah. We is about the group, and then the community level thinking is what's the best for the greater good. And it can be a little bit challenging sometimes getting ourselves to that community level thinking, because it comes out of our comfort zone. But when we're focused there, we can go inward and get a focus there, then I think everything tends to work out where it's meant to be, right? Rather than us forcing it. But my next question for you is, well, I believe that challenges in our lives are usually gifts, right? So maybe not at the time, we don't think they are at the time, but later on when we look back, we can normally see that there's a gold nugget there. So what challenge, have you had a challenge in your life that you can think about now that when you look back on, you're actually now grateful for? And how did that become a benefit to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's 1,000.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
But the biggest one, and probably the most interesting one, was when I was trying to build the construction industry. So every business that I start, I do everything in before, and like I figure out how I want it to run and how I want it to feel, like how I want the customer experience to be and everything like that. I figure that out when it's just me. And then I bring people into that system, because then I can train them effectively. So when we started the construction industry, now I've got a trade background as a structural engineer and boilermaker. So I'm like pretty handy. I can do stuff myself. So when we started that, I started just me. And I was, you know, taking on the small jobs and building the business like the same way I'd use the principles for the others, to see if it worked again, to see if it was, you know, something we could duplicate again. And it got to a stage where the more work I did, the more word of mouth spread. People were, you know, loving the results they were getting. They were enjoying the way that we handled the business. We did it so differently to everyone else that it was like, hey, you've got to use this guy. You've got to use this guy. And things started to grow. And we got to a point where we were just breaking into this new market, this new kind of level of customer where once we kind of got into this community, we were, business was going to be a very different thing. We're talking very, very high level clients with high level properties and commercial properties and all sorts of stuff. So I decided that I was going to do this bathroom renovation for this couple, and the timeline was already short, and they were going to go away for a holiday, and they were kind of like, look, as soon as we can come back, we'd love to come back, but we know it's a big job. So for me, I got within striking distance of the end, and I decided, well, hey, if I finish this like by tomorrow, then they are going to it's going to blow their minds.
Yeah.
So I was like, and that's the experience I want them to have. So I was like, I'm just going to work until it's done. I'm just going to keep going until it's done. So I worked a full 24 hours with didn't stop to do anything, just 24 hours on site. Got it finished, and literally that was just from the holding and like screwing and gluing and every tiling and everything. My fingernails were actually like bleeding. There's blood dripping down my arms, and I finished the job. And when I told them it was all done, I said, "Oh, look, it's all within thing." And they said, "Man, we've got cameras all around the house. Yeah. We know that your car did not leave here for 24 hours."
Yeah.
And without me knowing that this is how I wanted business to be. So without me knowing, that's how they saw, the fruits of my labor firsthand, without me, being like, hey, I work 24 hours, so I want this and I want that. I didn't even want them to know I did that. I just wanted them to think that I was that good that I could get it done in this time frame. Yeah. So they were like, we knew your car didn't leave. So we know what you put into this. We're going to tell everyone. And they did. And the business went crazy. And I was just working 24/7. Yeah. And it got to a point where I was doing that much work and the body was just so fatigued that I was doing another bathroom renovation, and I went to pick up this, just to move this clawfoot bathtub, just a fraction, so I could get some material out from behind it. And when I did that, I heard this huge crack and my whole body just went numb.
I was just about to say, be careful of that from my healer space, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of fell to the floor, and for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I couldn't move. I was just in that much pain. It ended up subsiding a little bit, and I got in my car. I went home, and the next morning. This was late at night, so the next morning we went to the doctor, and he checked it out, and he said, "Look, man, you've hemorrhaged 3 discs in your lower back. Yeah. You're not going to be able to get on the tools again for maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, depending on how you rest it. Let's send you to get some MRIs, some X-rays, all this kind of stuff." So we went and did that. I'm sitting on the couch, and he called me back and he said, "Wherever you are, don't move. Like if you're on the couch, if you're in bed, like this is where you are from now on, like for a little while." And I was like, well, what are we going to do? And that was the time where almost by force, I had 3 months worth of work booked in ahead of time. And just like yourself, I'd already made promises to these people, and I wasn't willing to let them all down, So in that instance, I had to find more people, with skills, and be able to train them on the phone and do all this kind of stuff without leaving my house. And at the time I was like, hey, like this construction business is done. Like we're done. If we miss these 3 months of clients, like no one needs a bathroom renovation every 6 months. If we do this, like this, everything I've worked towards to get it to this point is done. So we pivoted, and I might have made 250 phone calls to find the right people and ask for the right referrals and all this kind of stuff. But we got the band of people together, and I trained them all on the phone, and I did everything via email, and I did everything, off from the computer, because I couldn't move. I was in and out of hospital. Yeah. And that was the first time. I actually did that a second time and lost all the feeling from my waist down for about 3 months. This was, a year later. But that was the biggest blessing for me. It was a huge challenge, because my girlfriend now, like, she just became a full-time carer overnight. And she had to drop everything she was doing and all that kind of stuff. So it was a huge challenge. And at the time I was like, why is this happening? But now that was the catalyst for everything that we built going forward. And that's why, we've been able to be mobile the last year, and see a bit of the world and do all this stuff, because I learned the systems and skills that I needed to learn out of necessity, purely out of necessity. But it's really launched our lifestyle kind of, and how we do things, and how efficient I am at not being there. I used to be like, I have to be there and show everyone everything so they know how to do it. But it made my communication better. It made my communication with my clients better. It made the systems that we have for that, all of that better. And it's really the cornerstone that our businesses are based on. So that was the biggest obstacle, but also the biggest blessing that came through for me.
Yeah, and that's taken to a place now, I suppose, where you don't have the need to have to do 24-hour days, right? Because you've got the trust in the other people to do it. And I can really relate. I've learned now a little bit more to listen to my body and trust my body. It might not seem like it today with my coughing bits coming off the end of my flu, but in the early days of my flu, of the one that I've got now, I did just sit and binge watch Netflix, and I didn't feel guilty about it. And I just did it because, if we don't listen to where we are in our bodies, if our bodies start telling us, if our fingernails are bleeding, right, our bodies are telling us we need to stop and we don't, it will make us stop, right? And there's such this big, and I talk about this quite a bit, there's a big connection between our mind and our emotions and our bodies. And they're also, and it's on a deeper level that, it's all so tightly connected. And so when something's not working well, the rest of it is going to compensate and go. So we need to make sure that we're listening to, what are the thoughts coming through our head? Okay, they're not really the common thoughts that I'm usually thinking. What's going on? Why is that? Why did I just have that outburst? Okay, why is my emotion regulation not there? And, then with the body, okay, well, I'm starting to feel tired. That probably means I need to have a bit of downtime. Now, that doesn't, the thing with that, though, is you can't use as an excuse to just go and put your feet up all the time either, right? You've got to find that counterbalance because, it'd be very easy for me today to say to you, oh, I'm not feeling too well, let's not go. But I know I feel okay to do it. It's just that this cough just keeps coming through. So apologies for that. And like you said, I made a commitment to be able to do something. And if I have to cancel an appointment, I do now. I'm okay with that. But if I think I can do it, then I also have that need to go, no, I want to honor this. If I say I'm going to do something, I like to do it. So no, I love that example. That was really good. So now I suppose that you've had that opportunity to slow down a little bit and be able to have those teams working for you, probably gives you a little bit more time to work with yourself and on yourself. So what daily, weekly or monthly practices do you do that strengthen your connection with yourself?
Yeah, so I would say the number one thing that I'm always doing is introspection. Kind of, I like to, if I live a day, I like to look at how everything was handled and ask if it could be handled better, if it could be more efficient, if I would be happier, if it went a different way. And then I look at the results of how, if I wanted a different outcome, what would be the most logical thing to do differently?
Yeah.
And I like to keep things super simple, like, in anything, because I don't like anything I'm doing to be like, oh my God, he's a freak. I'm not. I'm just a normal dude. Like, I'm just doing normal stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I do is I like to have this kind of like motto, whatever you call it. All I want to do is be better than I was yesterday. Because
that's my mantra as well. I love that. Yeah, that's so good. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then in 365 days, you have to be 365 times better than you were a year ago. So it's simple, and it's something that, you can action, and you can look at yesterday. No one forgets a lot about yesterday. So yesterday, if you woke up at 8 and you know you needed to wake up at 5, then you have an opportunity.
Yeah.
So it becomes binary. And what I like about that is the next day you either wake up at 5 or you don't. It's so measurable. And
we have control over that, right? We don't realize sometimes that we control that. Oh, I'm late for work every day. And I've got a million excuses. No, you just made choices that made you late for work, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But we tend to offload. And that connects with something I once heard Matthew McConaughey doing a speech for something. And I think it might have been an award that he won. And they said, who is your hero? Like, who do you look up to? And his reply was, me in 10 years' time. And then in 10 years, they did an interview with him again. And they're like, well, who's your hero now? Who do you look up to now? And he goes, me in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And just showing that that's our thing. We're evolutionarily growing. We're always improving. And if that's our focus is to be better, and you don't have to go and jump mountains in a day. It's just little, you only need to take those little steps, right? What's going to make the most significance today for me to help growing me and help me be better today than I was yesterday?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like asking those questions and doing that, even if it's not daily, even if it's weekly, or like, even if something like out of your control happens and you handle it a way you didn't want to handle it, well, let's revise that. Let's revise that. Things aren't, there's so much more in your life that's controllable, like the variables are controllable than we anticipate. And then like there's other things like the weather and natural disasters and economy and all that. Like we can't control all that. But if you know 100% that you're doing everything you can do for a positive result, then you can go to bed at night and not be stressed and not have you're not looking back and regretting what you did. And that's how people say to me all the time, like, I'm flat out running one business. How are you running 5? And I go, but that's how it works, because if I do everything I can possibly do during the day, then I don't have to go to bed with regret. So I can let it all go. Anything else that happens is outside of my control. And my job is just to identify the variables that can be controlled.
Yeah. And sometimes we focus on, okay, to be better tomorrow, I need to do something. I need to go and take some action. Sometimes being better tomorrow than we are, than we are today is actually no action. Sometimes it's around acceptance, right? Sometimes it's like you said, accepting and going, okay, well, that's out of my control. I've done my best. I can sit with that instead of letting the worry thoughts come through and the stress thoughts come through. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be bashing down mountains. Sometimes it can just be sitting in a space, and actually the work we're doing on ourselves is being comfortable, knowing that we aren't able to make change, right? That's a really big one, has been a big one for me.
Yeah, I reckon so. And then you can kind of live with yourself without getting on top of yourself. We put, like, we're our own worst critics. We put all the pressure on top of ourselves, because we're the only ones out of 7 billion people. We're the only people that know what we're truly capable of. Yeah. So even if you put 90% effort in, to everyone else, they'll be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, good job. But it's only 90. So even though you did something 90% perfect, you get on your case about the 10. Yeah. So if you can live in a way where you go, cool, like, man, it wasn't perfect, but I'm better than I was yesterday still, then you are making progress. It might not always be 100%, but hey, 51's a bigger number than 49.
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually talking with a group of people, and we're talking about the power of the word and how we talk to ourselves and our own self-talk, right? And I said into the room, and just my language here, but I said, has anyone in this room not ever called themselves a stupid bitch or a stupid bastard, right? Anyone in the room, put your hand up. And there was no hands. And I'm like, if someone else called you that, if your friend, your spouse, your kids, you're on. Why do we allow ourselves to do it, right? And so maybe that's just the small change of making us better today than we were yesterday, of, okay, no, I'm going to change that thought up, right? I'm not going to allow myself to think of myself like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, introspection for me is the main one. And then, and like, you get all the results. Like, you can have any result you want if you look at that, because you can control you, no one else can. So introspection is the main one. Now, a year ago, we came to New Zealand to kind of start our trip around the world. And I used to hate the cold. I got so many injuries from football and stuff like that. I used to just hate the cold. Yeah. And when I was here, I didn't matter how many things I put on, I was just cold all the time, and my bones hurt and everything. So I was reading this book at the time about breathing and like what breathing does to our body and everything like that.
Yes, yeah.
And they had this exercise on there and like how to warm yourself up in the cold just by breathing. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna check it out. So at the time it was snowing, and I just walked out in my jocks out into the snow, and I was like, let's go, like, make me warm. And it did. And the exercise was phenomenal. And in maybe 30 seconds, I was like hot, and I was like, it's hot. And that got me curious about like just breathing and, all this kind of stuff. So like I use breathing to, like, if I'm going into a big meeting or something like that, I use it to prime myself. I use it to calm myself down, all that kind of stuff. And just regulate the body and the nervous system. So breathing or breath work, however you want to call it, is something that I mean, everyone breathes, so it's not that special.
But they don't, right? Not everyone really breathes. We're bringing, we've got the function of breathing, but we're not really breathing. And mainly cancers in the body are from lack of the two common things we need, is water and oxygen. If that's hindered, then the cell starts to mutate. So breathing is super important. And I've got a friend who's an actor or actress, and she actually said going into the different emotional states, all about the breathing. So that's how they bring on emotion as well. So breathing is just it's next level. And I don't think we even really understand how amazing it is. But if you find yourself going into a point of being sad, check your breathing. If you're starting to become angry, check your breathing. And just by changing that breathing, and like I said before, that mind, body, emotion connection, you change the way your body works, then that affects those emotions and minds. So you feel yourself starting to breathe in anger, just by calming that down and changing that, you won't be able to get angry.
Yep. Yeah, no, I 100% believe it. I mean, if I can go from physically being cold to physically being hot, imagine what else is possible.
Oh, it's next level. Like I must admit, I don't know a lot about all of the different levels of breathing, and maybe that's something I can look at some point. But from what I do know, it's phenomenal, and I do tap into little bits of it from time to time. But it's a really great little thing. So if people were looking to reach out to you, Dale, and wanted to have a chat about the Sequoia Project, I can't believe I'm saying it properly now, about the Sequoia, or about anything else you do, or even just to connect and have a chat. And I mean, I know we jumped on a Zoom call before we booked this, and it was great just having a bit of a chat and a bit of an inspiration for each other. How can they find you? What's the best place for them to reach out?
Right now, we are only on Facebook. So just hit us up on Facebook, the Sequoia Project. If you don't know how to spell Sequoia, just Google it. It's a tree.
It's in the show notes as well. What's the quickly before we go, what's the relevance of the tree? I know we spoke about it in our Zoom call.
Yeah, cool. So there was a couple of cool things about the tree that kind of embodied what we're trying to do in the group. Like for example, just off the top of my head without reading anything, if they're kept in the right conditions, there's no tree on earth that grows as fast as these things. So in the group, if we keep everyone in the right conditions, they should be able to grow faster than anywhere else. Yeah. So there's that. Then it's one of the oldest things on earth, trees on earth. I think the oldest one at the moment is about 3,000 years old, but they're measuring it and it still grows every year. So it's this whole thing, like never stop learning, never stop growing. Like it doesn't matter if you're just starting or you're 3,000 years old, just always keep learning, always keep growing. And then the third most important one to me that I liked about the whole thing is that these are some of the biggest trees on earth, but their root system's fairly shallow for their size. So when they grow together and they interweave their roots. So in storms and high winds, they keep each other up. And that to me with the group as well, it's like, hey, if we build a strong community, if we build people that want to help each other, if we build people that are getting success and want to give back to where they got it, we will be able to support each other in high winds and turbulence and through all the obstacles and stuff like that. So that's where the relevance of the Sequoia came in it for me, and where it really kind of had a good bearing on what we were trying to do in the group.
I love that. And I love a good name, right? So catching the octopus is that for me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit out that creates curiosity as well. I love things that create curiosity for people and get them to ask those questions, to have that introspection. So, all right. So on Facebook, the Sequoia Project, look, the spelling will be in the show notes, or you can Google it, Sequoia Tree, and reach out to Dale, have a chat to him, and see if he might be able to help you out.
For sure. That sounds good. Anyone that's, if I can't help you, I will help you. I'll just say it like that.
No worries. All right. Well, thank you for bearing with my coughing fits today, and being really patient with me, Dale, and for sharing on the podcast today. It's just been great having you as a guest.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe, and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.